The offseason is getting to the point where the fight for resources starts getting a lot more cutthroat, even as the reported action slows to a crawl. The Pirates are still active, and unlike previous seasons, not waiting for scraps.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to Locked On Pirates, your daily podcast for all things Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan, lifelong fan, former editor at SteelCityPirates.com. I've been covering this team since 2019. I'm excited to still be talking about real moves that could still happen this late in the offseason. Thanks for tuning in, and shout out to all the everydayers out there making Locked On your first listen every day. You make this show possible. Today, we're talking about the slowest part of the offseason, what big names are still out there, and answering your AMA questions on everything from Jose Quintana negotiations to Japanese talent. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. All right, so this is the slowest part of the MLB offseason, when only a few big free agents remain and the fight for resources starts to get really brutal. If Pirates were going to sneak in and grab a guy like Cody Bellinger, Kyle Schwarber, Alex Bregman, or Bichette, they would have been best served to do it early before the competition tightened. I saw a rumor about the Pirates having interest in Cody Bellinger from old notorious maker-upper of rumors, Jim Bowden. Thing is, he's right. But the interest, at least as far as what I've heard, was way back at the beginning of the offseason, and the answer that they got back was a pretty resounding no. So could there be renewed interest now? Maybe, but my guess would be that would be an agent trying to see if they can get the price up a little bit more on Cody Bellinger, not so much hoping that he comes to the Pirates. I mean, they've been told no already. Cody Bellinger is one of those guys that he's a pipe dream. I think it would have made a lot more sense for him to be a target at the beginning of the season, but now that they've brought in those lefties, O'Hearn and Lowe, and even Mangum to a degree because, he's a switch hitter, I'm not so sure that Bellinger is the same skeleton key fit that I think he was at the beginning of the offseason, like when we were talking about maybe making him one of those gigantic offers. In other words, if they were going to go and get Schwarber, turn around and go get Bellinger. I mean, I would be on board with that. I think that would have fit a need better in many ways than I think Schwarber would have. But again, you've kind of filled some of those now. It doesn't mean you can't fill them more competently. There's not a world in which, I mean, as much as I like Jake Mangum, there's just not a world in which you would prefer him or trust him more than Cody Bellinger, even if you're wrong. That's just not the way you would go into it thinking. I mean, you would feel like Bellinger's a big upgrade there, and he certainly could be. He's got capabilities at first base, which again, you don't need. You've brought in that redundancy with Ryan O'Hearn. You kind of didn't need it anyway because you had options right-handed even before that. So I don't know if the fit's there. I certainly don't think the fit's there to spend upwards of $30 million on a guy. I think he's worth that, but I don't think you're going to get him for less than 5 years. I think he's probably going to be wanting. I mean, he's taken the mini deals a few times now with the opt-outs and everything. I still feel like the Yankees, having not done anything this offseason yet, not really, they're going to have to go for him. I mean, I don't think they can afford, with everything else the AL East has added with Baltimore and Toronto, and Boston's still right there trying to put Bregman back on their team, and that would probably push them up into the stratosphere too, along with the trades they've made for starting pitching help. The Red Sox, Orioles, I mean, like, those teams have, and Blue Jays, they've all improved. So, I mean, I just can't see the Yankees just letting Bellinger go. I feel like they would be willing to win that bidding war for the right piece. And he's probably the right piece for them. I'm not saying the Pirates should completely stay out of it, but this feels an awful lot like another one of those ones where they can get in. They might even have the top bid for about a minute, but it's probably not going to take them to the promised land. That's where I'm at on it. I also just frankly just don't believe that this was a recent rumor. I really don't. I think this is Jim Bowden just trying to keep some conversation going, and in turn he's caused me to have conversation about it too, because it's not like I can ignore it. Everyone else is going to talk about it, and eventually you guys are going to want to hear what I have to say, so I might as well do it now. I just don't think Bellinger is going to work. I don't believe that they have it in them to get it done. I think it would be stretching beyond even the number that was floated out there, that 110 that was floated out there. We would blow past that to get this done. That doesn't mean that, again, they should avoid it. It just means I don't think they're going to go after it. I really don't. The more I think about it, the more ridiculous I think it is to even expect. I think we're securely into that next realm, that next rung. I think you're out on guys like Bellinger and Bregman and Bichette and Bichette for really an entirely different reason than the others. Because Bichette plays a position that I think the Pirates really could use. The problem is, I don't believe, and his original team no longer believes, that it's going to be shortstop. And if that's the case, well, you have two things. Is it an arm strength problem? If it's an arm strength problem, then third base is out too. If it's just he doesn't have the range, okay, you can probably get by with him at third. I tend to believe he's a good athlete. You could probably get by with him at third, even if it wasn't like forever. If it's just something you wanted to do for a little while, I think you could get by with it. So I would be open to Bichette. I would think that the Pirates would have expressed some interest along the line if they were interested. I haven't heard anything about him at all, really. And to be frank, the Bellinger thing, like I said, I haven't heard that since the beginning of the season. Alex Bregman, I cannot see him getting less than $30 million a year, even more so than I feel that way about Cody Bellinger. So again, I just don't think they're going to be in on him. I think you're looking at that next level, guys. You're down to like your Eugenio Suarez as being like the top target on the board that you can realistically achieve. That's where you're at. Maybe you do it, maybe you don't. Let's do our first AMA of the day here. Speaking of big names and negotiations, let's talk about what happened with Quintana last year before the Pirates signed Heaney. Will that inhibit negotiations with Quintana this year? No, nothing really happened overtly. Besides, Quintana's getting to the part of his career where I think he really wants to believe that whatever team he signs with is going to be able to get to the playoffs. And I don't think he believed that last year, frankly. I didn't talk to him, so I'm guessing. But just the other teams that he was really interested in signing with, they all had some degree of belief they were going to the playoffs, almost more so than his fit, almost more so than the assurance that he would be used as a starting pitcher. It almost seemed to matter more than anything else to him. And I think as far as this year goes, the Pirates have probably done enough that Jose Quintana could reasonably expect that this could be a playoff team. That said, if he wants more than a year, he isn't going to get it here. I don't know that anybody's going to give him that. But if it's something that's in his head as a sticking point, I don't believe that they'll ever cross that hurdle. I really don't. I don't think there was anything nefarious really about it. He wanted about the same amount as Andrew Heaney. I thought Andrew Heaney was a good swing at a player last year. He had some World Series pedigree fairly recently, some versatility to be able to pitch out of the bullpen and or off the starting pitching mound. It just, he ran out of gas. I mean, he ran out of gas and ultimately ran out of gas so much that he retired. So, I mean, I think Andrew Heaney thought he had a couple more years in him last year. I think the Pirates thought that he had more gas in his tank than he did last year. And he, to his credit, he started out well. But yeah, Jose Quintana has definitely been better recently, and that would have been a better signing. But again, I think they had a couple lefties they were looking at last year. Heaney, Quintana. I think Quintana just kind of didn't express enough interest that it was going to get done, that they just pivoted and got something done, and Heaney was the guy. I don't think it was any like we hate you now stuff or anything like that. In fact, as far as I understand, Quintana had a great time here. Now, I will say this. A lot of his allegiance to the Pirates was tied to Oscar Marin. He loved the guy, loved what he did for his career, still evangelized about what he did for his career as late as last year to the media outside of Pittsburgh. So he wasn't doing it for effect. And the guy really, really likes Oscar Marin. Well, he ain't here anymore. So while I don't think he's going to go, oh, Bill Murphy, I can't pitch for him. One of the big reasons that we thought that Jose Quintana might really want to come back to Pittsburgh and why there's been such a, two-sided interest here, I think was tied to that Oscar Marin thing. So maybe his name isn't as top shelf as it would have been if that was still the case. But again, it's not like I think Bill Murphy would screw him up. It's just, I know that was a big reason why Pittsburgh had such a soft spot for Jose Quintana. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about some more AMA questions that are just going to lead us into some pretty cool conversations. So buckle up. Fridays always feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives new fans a way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It adds extra energy on Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Locked On Pirates. I don't intend to do AMA shows all the time, but sometimes the AMAs line up with topics I want to discuss anyway, and this one is a great example of that. Feel free to roast me, he says, but what about a reunion with IKF as insurance in case Griffin isn't ready? I'd play him at third and Triolo at short. If Griffin emerges, use IKF like Toronto did, except running from third to home. Yeah. Listen, I don't hate it. If it falls to that. And what I mean by that is if they really want Eugenio Suarez and they think they can get it done, please keep pursuing it. Try to get it done. I don't think it's deniable that Eugenio Suarez's bat would complete this lineup a heck of a lot more than bringing IKF back. That said, this is an interesting idea that honestly not a lot of people have talked about. And the reason I don't think a lot of people have talked about it is there's a perception maybe that they're their marriage ended badly last year as he was placed on waivers. But first, I think fans need to understand a lot of the time that stuff is coordinated with players. We just saw it in the NFL. Adam Thielen is here in the with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he asked to be released from the Vikings because he wanted an opportunity to win. And I mean, that's what happened. Now, is it the same in baseball? Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes it is. And IKF, really, he should have been traded last year at the deadline. Frankly, that's what they should have done. They didn't. They didn't find a good match for it. And ultimately, they ended up waiving him for him. Heaney, they waived because, well, Heaney became unplayable. But there's two guys they probably should have traded last year. There was no market for Heaney, let's be real. But IKF, I think you probably might have been able to find somebody for. Let's not forget what he did last year. He hit for average. He was one of the better hitters on the team. In fact, at the beginning of the year when they stunk out loud, he was arguably their best hitter. I mean, that didn't stop the Pirates from hitting him ninth repeatedly, but he was one of their better hitters, at least as far as getting on base and keeping the lineup moving. I mean, there were times when he was the only one that you actually thought you had a chance to get a hit with. I like the idea. I do. I think if you miss on Eugenio Suarez, I think this is a really, really reasonable, good insurance policy. Now, how much money is he going to want? Last year he was making a little over 7. Boy, I don't know. I mean, he's young enough that I would think like he might still think he can get multiple years, but I don't know if he'll get them. I'm not sure that he's a starter for anyone, especially a playoff team. This might be as close as he comes to what potentially could be a starting role early on a team that at least has aspirations to be a playoff team. So you could find an opening there. I did not get that he hated it here. Okay. I do know that they talked about extending him last year. That was a conversation that was being had. And at least if my sourcing is correct, Bob Nutting put the kibosh on it last year. Understandably, because why would he want to keep somebody from a team that was stinking so bad? That was one of the big gets to bring in to help that team not stink so bad. So maybe he just kind of stunk from the garbage he was hanging out with basically last year. I don't know. Feels like it would be mighty strange to bring back a guy that you just waived at the end of last year, unless you factor in that it was probably his idea to get waived to be on a playoff team and ultimately lose a World Series. But who's counting? Nah, it wasn't all his fault. I like the idea, honestly. I think IKF, I think he could be a good part of this team. That's kind of that roster filling stuff that I think a lot of teams kind of wait later in the offseason for. And I would think that that's fine to do. Again, that's why I would finish up your pursuit of Eugenio Suarez. At least get to the point where you know whether it's foolish to pursue it any further or you've done as far as you're going to go and now it's up to him to take it or not. Once you get to that point and you've decided, hey, this is where I am on Suarez, it's not going to change, he's not going to change, I don't see this coming together, then pivot and do something like IKF. I don't mind that at all. And that's really what he would be too, an insurance policy. He's an insurance policy that happens to be a capable fielder. It's not a lot different than, a team like the Dodgers deciding they have to have a player like Reyes, or you just need those versatile fielders that have a competent major league bat. They can give you a professional at bat. I think that's the type of guy that this team could really use. So I love the thinking there, man. Really do. The Pirates have done a nice job adding left-handed power and contact hitting to the 40-man roster this season, or this offseason. While the focus has been balancing the lineup with right-handed power, isn't contact hitting just as important when the password is lurking? Well, I mean, there's a lot of guys that are lurking. If we were worried about guys that are lurking and making decisions based on guys that are lurking, I'm not sure you go out and get, a lot of players. I mean, you kind of just assume that your next group is going to come up and do it. Just because they traded a pitcher that was going to pitch this year for Garcia does not mean that Garcia has to play this year. It doesn't mean that you should 100% expect him to be on this roster. It doesn't mean that he has to or it's a failure. It's just not like that. I certainly don't think that the team should do anything that's going to address the 26-man roster with an eye towards him. We just talked about IKF potentially coming in just in case Griffin's not ready. Well, geez, if I'm still leaving the door open that just in case with Griffin is real, I'm certainly leaving it open for just in case to be very real for Garcia too. I think either of them could win a spot on the team, but I don't know that I'm making a lot of my decisions around them based on my knowledge of what's going to be there. Like the person who asked this question and I probably have very different views of our belief in Connor Griffin right now. I personally believe he can start on day one. I don't believe that he's got to be a finished product. I don't believe he has to look like a finished product. I think he can learn at the major league level, and I'd be okay letting him do it. I'd take my lumps. I'd be okay with it. I don't believe you would be. You have a little more trepidation with things like Connor Griffin and whatnot. So I guess I can understand, feeling like they need to go out and get certain aspects that, you feel are coming. You might want to take those off your shopping list. I get that. But Garcia, I think, is a little bit more shaky as far as what you're actually going to get out of him and when than I do Griffin. Again, personal difference of opinion here probably, but I think Griffin's more of a sure thing that he's going to contribute and contribute quickly this year. Garcia, I think will have some work to do to displace a guy like Jake Mangum, largely based on what you already suggested. Contact hitting is just as important. And that's why I think Jake Mangum's going to play a heck of a lot more than maybe we thought, or maybe you'd expect. I think this team needs a bat like him, arguably more than Garcia. Now, when and if it gets to the point where Garcia can come up and augment that so you can play both sides of the fence and do different things with the configurations, boy, if that's from the jump, that's great. It is. But no, I don't look at any prospect. I mean, you picked on Griffin or Garcia, so that's why I did. But I don't look at any prospect skill set that's coming and feel like I don't need it anymore. That's just all there is to it. Like, I think Esmeralda Valdez, crazy power. I think you could easily put him in the exact same category as Garcia to me. In fact, I think it's highly likely those two directly compete for who becomes that fourth outfielder and ultimately can compete with Mangum for playing time or pushes Brian Reynolds to the DH role or whatever. But I think you've got a couple guys there with that power potential. That said, the ads for this year, well, the reason that it's about power is because right now that's what they've needed most. They do need contact, but they've needed power because it was so much worse than the rest of the league. They were at least drawing walks and getting on base, even as they hit terribly last year. So it stands to reason like power is what translates getting on base into runs. And I think that's where they were looking. But no, I don't make a whole lot of decisions about, you know, balancing the lineup 100% when I'm talking about balancing it on the potential of players that are coming up. That's all. I love the question though, man. What a thought exercise to really think through some of that stuff. We got to take another quick break, and when we come back, a couple more great AMAs to get us going, take us to the finish line here. I love it. I love it. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Another couple great questions here. Under this deeply flawed system, what's the Pirates' best chance to compete? To me, it's acquiring as much dominant pitching as possible. Shouldn't they go after Framber Valdez or anyone else of his caliber with everything they have? Yes, they have some horses, but they don't need to be even more. Don't they need to be even more dominant? Yeah, I like this. This was a thought that I had early on. When it seemed like no batters were going to sign with the Pirates, we started being creative about different directions that this team could go. And one of those directions that we chose was they could go after big time pitching and see if they can augment that, make it so ridiculously unhittable that, it requires even less hitting than you thought you might need to get to. I guess we're kind of still there. I mean, if you don't add like a big hitting third baseman or another, power hitting left fielder or whatever we're looking for, somebody that hits regardless of what your requirements are, then yeah, you're probably going to have to think about doing something like that. I think another angle on why it's smart though to consider adding a pitcher is because, yeah, you'd be temporarily adding payroll, maybe more payroll than you're comfortable with this year. But next year, when you want to go and trade somebody like a Mitch Keller, if you were to have like a Framber Valdez in-house signed for, I don't know, 3 years, you're probably more comfortable with moving somebody like Mitch Keller because now you're not truly looking at him as having to be your number two, regardless of whether he fits there or not. You don't need the innings eating and all that because you're able to move on because you brought in another veteran. I like the idea of that. I do. And Framber Valdez has been great. He's going to cost a ton of money. So be it. I understand all that stuff, and we don't have to repeat all the Pirates issues every time that we discuss a free agent. But where your head is great. That's exactly the kind of thing I think the Pirates need to be looking into as an alternative. If they can't get a bat they need or want. Now, I thought it made a lot more sense before we had made some additions, before the Lowe trade, before the O'Hearn acquisition. I felt like more passionate about this angle. Now to me it would be a real nice to have. The thing for me is you're going to add a pitcher anyway. And if it's going to be a pitcher that's worth anything, like let's go back to Jose Quintana. I mean, you're probably looking at what, $7, $8 to $10 million, somewhere in there. I mean, even Rich Hill was $8 million, guys. So I mean, like, you're probably looking at somebody in that range. And if you're going to look at somebody in that range, is it really so ridiculous to just consider maybe bringing in somebody like a Framber Valdez that, yeah, he cost 20 more than that this year and the next couple? But I mean, it's a legitimate thing to look into, and there's so many reasons to do so. I talked about the Keller thing where you could move him next year and not feel it as much, mediocre. Ultimately, I feel like that's what's going to have to happen anyway, unless you believe Bubba and Jones and all these guys are just going to make it so full with all that young pitching that you're just not going to need veterans anymore. I think that's a lot to ask. And I think most championship teams that you watch, aside from like the early 90s Braves, tend to have, a nice veteran pitcher, and even they had them on the back end. So I think like you should probably consider this line of thinking. I don't know that they will. I haven't heard an awful lot of rumors that they will. I haven't heard them rumored on any big name pitching starters at all. I haven't heard them rumored on any relief pitchers at all. Does not mean they're not doing it. Just haven't heard it. And I love the way you're thinking, though. That's brilliant, actually. Charrington has shown a willingness to trade pitching depth when it comes to trading position players. Is it more about hoarding prospects, low trade value, or an ineffective evaluation process that diminishes opportunities to trade? Pitching came along a heck of a lot faster than position players did in their drafts. They've just done a much better job of developing pitching and drafting it, frankly. And they've had a really good method for getting the pitching to develop quickly. They're getting guys from draft to the majors lightning quick as far as the pitching world goes. That stuff doesn't happen a lot. And we're seeing it happen here a lot. Now, hopefully that remains under Bill Murphy. I think it will. I don't think they're changing a whole lot to their infrastructure on the come up. So I'm not that worried about it. But that's the reason the pitching's been so available. They just had so stinking much of it. They really did a good job of developing that out. As far as the hitters, well, there are some. They're there. But man, you're just to the point where like the real exciting stuff is just starting to peek through into the majors. I mean, and some of the guys that should have been exciting, well, they haven't been. Nick Gonzalez got injured so much along the way, and even has been injured once he's gotten here, that we're to the point where we don't even consider him a starter. So, I mean, could he get traded? Yeah, he could get traded. Now, Henry Davis, can't trade him yet. You still got to give him another year. He's not worth anything because he hasn't hit. Now, if he hits this year and he plays the kind of defense he has, well, geez, you got an all-star catcher overnight. What would they do then? Well, you'd immediately start calling for them to extend him, right? Because it's taken 3 years to get him here. By the time you get to that point, yeah, he'll become somebody that they can trade from. But position players take a longer time to get to the point where you're trading anything of value. Look at a guy like Isak Paredes we talked about yesterday. Tampa has him for a couple years. He hits some home runs. The Rays are like, listen, there's enough that's wrong here that we better take advantage of that massive number of home runs and trade him off before people figure it out. And they did. And then the Cubs had him for about a year, and they figured out exactly what the Rays did. And they traded him off before someone else figured it out entirely. And now, Houston's looking to do it too, all before he's even through his arbitration. They traded him. Was that a good job? If the Pirates really wanted to trade a position player of value, Jared Triolo is probably their most valuable position player that they've developed that's at the major league level. If you want an answer to your question, and I know you do, that's why. Because it just ain't here yet. Check in on this like in 2028 and see what you think then, because then you might actually have some prospects being blocked by other prospects. You might have a guy like Deuce Gorson not being able to crack through because they've got too many guys like him. That's when I think it'll change a little bit more. Let's do one more here. What's your opinion of the level of talent in the Japanese leagues compared to AAA? And is it reasonable to expect a Japanese player to transition to Major League Baseball more successfully than a AAA player? Yes, I think it is for the most part. Most of the guys that are getting into the transfer, or I guess it's not the transfer portal, it's not college football. What am I talking about? Most of the people that get into the posting system, well, they tend to be a little older. That's actually a big reason why Okamoto was so exciting. He was only 29, so you still felt like there's some prime years left there. I would say there's an adjustment period to the league. And then after that, hopefully what they've seen in their career kind of takes over and gives them that experience aspect that you're always waiting to build at this level. So you hope they don't have the true rookie experience. But I think it's fair to assume a Japanese player coming over here via the posting system is a little bit above a AAA guy, at least as far as your expectations go. If it's a guy like Okamoto who has been the home run king over there for a couple years, maybe you should have a little more expectation. But if it's just your normal everyday, this pitcher's posted from over there, yeah, I think you can reasonably say it's above AAA. It's a better bet than AAA, but not a lot. Korean players, specifically from the Korean Baseball League, not the nationality, you're probably looking at AAA period as an equivalent. I think it's that much of a step below the Japanese league as far as baseball goes. Great questions today, everybody. Hey, from Bellinger dreams to IKF insurance policies and a little trip to Japan, this offseason might be slow, but it's never boring. Tomorrow, we're going to get into discussing some dynamic duos in Major League Baseball, specifically when a Cy Young pitcher is paired with a top young hitter, just like the Pirates are potentially poised to see this year. Let's see what others did with their toys so we can dream on it a little bit. If you haven't already done so, go ad-free. Join our Discord for real-time Pirates talk. $5 a month, $50 a year. Hit that Supercast link in the description to support the show and connect with other everydayers. Remember, we're serious about Pirates baseball because somebody has to be. Let's go Bucks.